Great. Good morning. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Pata, for having us today. To introduce this topic, I thought I would start with a story. So I live in Bangkok, and as you know, it's a culinary capital of the world. My wife and I were walking a few years ago. We were walking next door to the condo where we live, and we noticed there was a new Thai restaurant opening. And it was a hole-in-the-wall Thai restaurant. You know, it was really dark inside, no air conditioning, all fans, flies all over the place. You know, all the elements of a good restaurant, actually. And so we went inside because we want to give every place a shot. And so we went inside. We ordered a lot of things. The pricing was excellent, I have to say. And we were eating, and as we were eating, we came to the same conclusion because we kind of looked at each other and we thought, don't tell anybody about this place, right? Because it was fantastic. Seriously, it was just fantastic food, and it became one of our mainstays. So we used to go to this restaurant pretty much several times a week. Even on the weekends, we would bring our kids there. And over time, the place actually achieved one of those maroon circles, which I think is a Michelin gourmet or gourmand. Let's see, you guys are Beep Gourmand, right? Beep Gourmand. So it achieved that, and it started to get a bit busier. So we stopped going on the weekends because there were lines on weekends, and it was impossible. They didn't have reservations and all of that. And then over time, they got air conditioning. They actually started to get a menu, a very nice menu with pictures and everything in it. And then they appeared in social media. And so and this was internationally. They actually showed up in TikTok as well as in, what are these other, I'm too old to use these platforms, but it's called Instagram, right? So they showed up in Instagram, and all of a sudden overnight, this place became super famous. And you would see tourists lining up outside the place, and we basically stopped going because we couldn't go in there. And the only times we could really go is when we had visitors because they heard about the place and wanted to try it. So why am I telling you this? Well, a place like that, a small hole in the wall, can become global overnight just because of the platforms, the digital platforms that we use today. And that's a fantastic thing, right? Because it's essentially democratizing the ability to be known. But at the same time, look what happened to the people who lived next door to it, right? We used to go there multiple times a week. Now we don't go anymore, and when we do go, we've noticed the food has actually changed, right? They've changed it to kind of suit the tastes of those who are non-Thai. And that is essentially what we want to talk about today, because some places can sometimes become a bit dependent and not be able to control their own destiny because of the digital platforms that are being used today. And so we'd like to delve into some of the issues around this, but before that we have a Slido where I'd like to ask a question of everybody in the audience. And so could we try the Slido? I know it didn't work a few minutes ago, but could we try the Slido? Okay, here we go. Please join at this particular QR code. And here's our question. What is your destination's biggest digital challenge today? Okay, I see there are no challenges so far. Aha, here we go. Okay, great. It's working. Okay, so let's give everybody a couple seconds here. You're seeing a lot of the themes that have been reflected over the last few days that we've been having this forum. Okay, it looks like Skills Gap is going to win the day here, unless measurement can catch up. Nope. Okay, let's say Skills Gap is the #1 thing. So why don't we start with this? To my esteemed panelists here, do you all have an opinion on the fact that Skills Gap is considered the largest challenge for destinations today? Any reaction to that? Yes, please, Fabrizio.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Cool. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I can share. Well, I want to share something with you first. you should have told the restaurant that you were one of the first clients and they should always keep a table for you and your wife and family.
Okay, actually they do, but they do. But the food is just it tastes much more Pan-Asian now than it does taste Thai.
I see. On the skill gap, I work with university as well, and it's clear everywhere in the world that there is a skill gap. I think one of the main issues is that younger generations do not feel enticed to go into this type of hospitality jobs. And I think it's, probably responsibility of governments to support their career, to allow these guys to have a real career and don't just feel it like it's the first stepping stone of my life. I was telling you yesterday, I was busting tables when I was at university to pay for my studies. I never thought about a career in that space, not just because I didn't want to do that, but because there was no future ability of that type of job. So I think intervening in that sense could help with the skill gap.
Great. So providing a future, essentially. Okay. And I see, Sunny, you'd like to.
Yeah, no,
contribute.
I actually took that a different way. I didn't think about the new generation joining the labor workforce. But actually, when it comes to digital challenges, the people who are in the industry now might not have the skills or the capabilities to keep up with the pace of the digital challenges. I am learning AI, right? And it's hard. And I assume other people are as well, and all the new platforms that are out there, right? I'm literate with Instagram. I am not literate with TikTok and anything else out in the world. I have very, very little exposure to. So for me, that answer was I have a skills gap as well, and just keeping up with digital trends. And I'm just kind of glad platform dependency was not number one.
Great. So even somebody as young as you're saying
thank
that
you. Thank you.
you're saying that you have your own skills gap. Okay, that's very interesting. Florian.
Yes, thank you, Jackson, for setting up the stage so nicely. Well, what I can see on my side is that all these challenges are kind of interconnected. If you think about skills gap, if you have a skill gap challenge, then you're going to have some challenge to capture data, right? You're going to have some challenge to interpret data. And then you're going to have a lot of dependency on platforms. So I think this is what we can clearly see. And similar to governance, if you have a slow governance, it's going to be very hard to adapt to AI disruptions.
Terrific. And thank you for the intro into the platforms there, Florian. And I see, Yang,
Yes.
we never leave you out here.
Good morning, everybody. So, looking at skills gap, I think that's an interesting top choice, because I always look at it from the perspective of, we hear from our public sector colleagues that, destination management is falling behind, particularly on tech skills and all these things. And I would say that, it kind of makes sense, right? Because the private sector is, no offense to our public stakeholders in the room, typically leading in innovation, right? So OpenAI, Google, NVIDIA, they are pushing the technological envelope. So of course the skills that need to be developed follow, right? So obviously when those skills haven't been developed yet, that's where the gap exists. So to me, having a skills gap is not actually surprising. It's actually normal, because there's a few companies who are changing the industry and everybody follows suit, right? Before OpenAI, generative AI was not forefront of everyone's minds, right? But when the launch of ChatGPT-1 came out, and then followed by Claude, now China has DeepSeek, we're all talking about AI. But before these companies existed, generative AI was not a thing. AI skill sets was not a gap, right? But only because of these innovators, now we have AI skills, and AI skills gap. So my reflection on this particular point is, having a skills gap is not something to be afraid of or be anxious about, but actually reflective of reality, which is innovation is always pushing new industries, and the rest of the world, everybody from the public sector, other private sector players, right? At Booking.com, we were not in generative AI, but all of us have had to integrate and innovate generative AI into our products. We are also catching up. And that's the truth with every other player following the market leaders.
Great, thanks, Yang. But then how do we, because you've mentioned the private sector, and I think we all represent the private sector here, How do we get travel up to speed? Because you're mentioning we have to accept there's going to be a skills gap. But what can we do? Because we want travel. We all want travel. Everybody in this room wants it to be at the forefront, right, of technology and of the digital age. So how?
I mean, I'm happy to, thanks for rebounding this back to me, but everybody asks this in a travel conference is AI going to displace human jobs, right? And I think most of us, technology companies will tell you, no, don't be afraid. AI is not going to displace, human jobs. It's going to disrupt, but it's not going to displace, right? At the end of the day, hospitality is a people-to-people industry. You visit destinations. Destinations are filled with what? People, as well as the environment, as well as tourism attractions. These are all run by people. Now, can they be assisted by AI? Of course. But even us at Booking.com, everybody's going to say, hey, agentic AI, it's going to, substitute Booking.com away. You guys can just go to ChatGPT and book your holidays. There's no need to go to Booking.com or Airbnb. Don't, you guys are in the past, soon to be. It's not happening, guys. Let me tell you that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Yang. So based on that, why don't we go into some of the substantive questions that this panel should cover? So to the panelists, what's the single biggest way that the digital platforms, especially the ones that you represent, will change how destinations will actually compete now and into the future? So, Sunny, ladies first.
Thank you. I think digital platforms are just going to change where destinations have to compete. In the past, maybe all destinations focus primarily in the channels and areas that you're growing awareness. But now that's kind of shifting down further into the funnel to where distribution lies, right? It's great if travelers are aware of who you are and where you are and what people can do there, but are you actually bookable, right? Can I find you on the big platforms, on ODAs, meta search, or through a travel advisor? Do I have access to information and content and product that I, as a traveler, can book? And if I don't, that's when the traveler might just end up at another destination, and that's where I think the big shift is going to come.
Great. Florian.
No, I think if you allow me, I would like to add AI into digital platforms, because obviously we all represent digital platforms, but the AI and the way it has completely revolutionized the decision booking making process is super important. We used to get inspired on social media. It used to take weeks to plan a trip. You would ask friends about the best itinerary to go when you travel. Now you get all of this with LLMs and with AI assistants, So I think, the collapse of these weeks to a second is a big shift. And I work with a lot of DMOs. And we see it. The DMOs are working on the long marketing cycles. They plan like 6 months in advance on the next marketing campaign. But in 6 months, the traveler will have moved. So how can you capture in a second on that very tiny booking opportunity that you have is, for me, the biggest shift and the biggest challenge for DMOs.
But Florian, how can you? So answering your question.
Well, no, of course, I think we're going to talk more about how the destinations can get more visibility through AI over the panel. That's why we have this 40 minutes to talk together, and hopefully we're going to solve some of the problems the destination might have.
Okay, by the end of the panel, we will solve many of the DMO's problems.
Exactly.
Excellent. Okay, I see, Fabrizio, you were about to continue.
Yeah, sure. I think, Joseph from HPX was showing it earlier. Travel industry is about change, about innovation. It's in constant evolution. We saw you were picking up the phone, calling the hotel, and now, of course, no one calls hotels anymore unless they want a special deal, and they call for that. TripAdvisor revolutionized travel. Before us, every country in the world, every city in the world, every destination in the world had the same glossy brochure about, this is the best destination in the world, best beaches in the world, best bars in the world. And then, we introduced the idea of, okay, but let's ask people that have been there what they think about that specific place. And that changed the way in which people perceive a destination, and it also changed the way in which destinations or hospitality business started to welcome guests because they knew that they were about to be held accountable for the way in which they were working. So I think it's all about evolution. Of course, today the main evolution is AI. And I think, of course, all of us are integrating AI, as Jan was saying, this is what we have to do, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, what is fundamentally changing is that the way in which you as a destination talk about yourself today is the way in which people will discover you tomorrow. Because LLMs will integrate all this feedback, all these reviews. We're one of the most cited websites when it comes to when you ask your ChatGPT, Claude, whatever you want, what should I do in Seoul? Where should I go? Why would I do that? What's the best 10-day itinerary in South Korea? Whatever you look for, we are one of the most cited websites because, of course, these LLMs feed themselves on content, UGC, on reviews. So I think it's extremely important right now for destinations to understand, how do I want to play? How do I want people to discover me, not just today, but tomorrow, in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And start building that narrative, start going in that direction. We let them be found in the way in which they want to be found by the people that want to found them.
Great, thank you, Fabrizio. But then how does AI work with TripAdvisor? Won't it replace it in some ways? Because if AI, basically all of my friends and all of their reviews can be captured through AI. So will I still need to go to TripAdvisor?
Of course you have to.
Okay.
That's a short answer. The long answer is, I think one misconception is that we as platforms only use AI to plan itineraries. We use AI in a lot of different ways. So without bothering everyone, we use it also to do content moderation. It helps us in, screening fake reviews from real reviews, and it helps building a better product for travelers, eventually for hospitality businesses, for destinations. I think when you go on ChatGPT or whatever else you use, in any case, those bots are feeding on the content that you have on different platforms. So if you want to have a direct access to that content, you should come to TripAdvisor. And also, we have our own AI-powered trip plan itinerary on TripAdvisor itself, and it's integrated with all of our platforms. So it's not just TripAdvisor, it's also TheFork, it's also Viator. So we help you build your itinerary, we help you save your flight tickets, your hotel bookings. We direct you to book restaurant via TheFork, we direct you to book experiences via Viator, and that's another, actually, to your first question, that's another revolution in the travel industry. People were, up until probably before COVID, so not a lot of time ago, people were choosing a destination and say, I want to go to Beijing, what can I do? And then they were looking for experiences. Now it's almost the other way around. People say, I want to do this experience in this specific place, or I want to watch this football game, or music tourism is on the rise as well. People decide what they want to do, and then based on that, they plan their itinerary accordingly. So the power of experience is going to be extremely important as well.
Got it. Thank you, Fabrizio. I believe Yang would like to contribute.
One quick comment from me. What do platforms do that has revolutionized the travel industry? Speed and scale, right? When BTS announced their concert tickets, Booking.com, we saw 50-60% increase in search and bookings instantly. So the lesson for DMOs and destinations is understanding this is the power of platforms and how to leverage that effectively to manage your inbound volumes, right? I hear this all the time that, OTAs, we're dependent on platforms or we're not dependent on platforms. My answer to that is, actually, to be on platforms is an elective decision. What Jackson talked about, that restaurant, the restaurant owner does not have to be on TikTok. That was a choice. You don't have to be on Instagram. That's a choice. Accommodation providers does not have to be on Booking.com. That is a decision they've taken. So, and a lot of destinations are actually experiencing over-tourism. Japan is on track to clock 36 million visitors this year. Mount Fuji, they don't want more people. Tokyo, they don't want more people, right? They're too visible on platforms. So I think for destinations, the question isn't so much, has platforms changed destination management and tourism? The answer is absolutely. The question is, how do you want to utilize this as a tool, right? It can be used to increase inbound visitorship, but it can also create a problem if you rely on it too much. And many different destinations are experiencing problems because they're too visible. They're too well known. Amsterdam does not want to have more visitors. They're imposing a foreigner levy for visitations, right? Different attractions in Amsterdam are limiting the number of people that can visit. So actually, I think that platforms is very much a tool that can help you, but it can also be wrongly leveraged.
Great. Okay, thank you, Yang. You touched a bit on dependency. And I think, Sunny, you wanted to interject there,
Yes,
please.
yes. Actually, I wanted to kind of add on or rebut a little bit of what
Rebut,
TripAdvisor
please.
said. No, and I agree, right? TripAdvisor is like what the #1 platform everyone uses to get reviews and insight. But that's on a global scale, and there are a lot of regional platforms and associations and search engines and review sites that aren't as visible outside for the rest of the world, right? Like when I travel, I might not utilize TripAdvisor, right? I go on neighbor blogs or communities. I go on Reddit to look at restaurants because I trust the users there a little bit more. And in this way, all the information out there is incredibly fragmented, right? Korea is a growing outbound market, but many, maybe, a majority of the destinations here might not think of us as your #1 outbound destination. In that case, the information that you can give Korean travelers is very fragmented. Some of it we will get from TripAdvisor, some of it we will get through neighbor blogs, and in this way, there is dependency because certain platforms like Booking and Trip and TripAdvisor, they become that default aggregation layer where they just sit on top of a lot of different information and insights, and that allows you to tap into markets that might not be tier 1, but definitely sit within the tier 2, tier 3 regions.
If I can develop on this, Jackson, I agree the industry is genuinely fragmented, but for me it's kind of like a chicken and egg scenario, you know, like when my counterpart Joseph Shaler was presenting what travel and distribution was 25 years ago. Was our industry fragmented back then? It's a question, you know, all the platforms, and we're here all representing digital platforms. So I think we will have the same opinion, saying we are more like, we're not gatekeeper, we are amplifiers. But at DIDA, for example, I mean, we're connecting 1.5 million travel supplies globally to global scales. And this is, when you talk to destination, this is not one destination by themselves can capture on their own. So I think we give them access to a lot of choice. We give access to the industry, and that's how that's how I think for me it's not about dependency, it's about accessibility.
Okay, so there's some opposing views here, but could I challenge you, Yang, on something you said? Because the restaurant that I used to go to, I'm not sure they really had a choice to be on TikTok or on other platforms. The users were the ones who were essentially saying, I've been to this restaurant, loved it, everybody should go here. So doesn't that create a dependency of sorts on the restaurant or on destinations?
I would say no.
Okay.
The reason is because, let's be honest, right? Fragmentation in the travel industry was always there. Before the digital platforms emerged and after. I mean, actually, you could argue that it was even more fragmented, right? Before, information was analog. One person had to tell the next person. And then, you know, when you tell a story, you change it ever so slightly, right? So you could argue that information before the internet was even more fragmented, more difficult to access, and there were more paywalls to access privileged information. What digital platforms did was break through those paywalls, democratized information, made it completely searchable. That's what Google did for all information, right? And everybody learned from that. Booking.com literally just does what Google does, but for accommodations. And now we do flights, and we do cars, and we do attractions, but it's an information aggregation technology, right? But does that mean we aggregate all information that exists out there? Absolutely not, right? TripAdvisor has a lot more review information about attractions and destinations. We don't do that. And I think different digital platforms, we look at our niche, we look at where we're good at, and we stick to that, right? Before we think about, oh, do we want to aggregate other sectors of data, right? That's a major investment. That takes a long time. And how does that seamlessly integrate with our existing UX and ability to access what people already use us for? So I would say that the dependency is sort of a misnomer. It's a bit of a simplification because I think, yes, you can indeed have users upload your destination or restaurant or wherever, without your consent or permission. That is absolutely, the case. It does happen. But, many destinations, many places have begun to gatekeep overwhelming numbers of people, right? They stop, they cap. So there are ways to stop. And then you can even publish that information, right? It's a well-known fact that now that there's certain destinations limiting it number of people visitations by day, and this fact is posted very visibly. So the moment you see that, you can now make a choice. Do I want to go? I'm probably not going to make that cap. I might as well not go and go somewhere else.
Thank you, Yang. And I think Fabrizio, you wanted to jump in there also.
Sure, I can. Happy to do. Before I do that, we just integrated with Naver as well. So now you can find on Naver, I don't even know if I pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, no, I love
but
this.
we integrated that, so you can find our data, our reviews, our pictures on the app as well. So now we're a bit more present also in South Korea. I agree, honestly, with what Yang said. It's a choice. Even your restaurant, they wanted to make more money. They decided to be on platforms, get more people through their doors. And of course, this might mean compromise with the quality of food maybe, or with the taste of the food, making it a bit more accessible also to tourists that are maybe not too used to the type of flavors, but there's a choice. These guys wanted to, see as simple as make more money, have more people through their doors, and they did it, no one forced them to do that. They could have done just, I don't know, neighbor campaigns if they didn't want to do that, or just be on Instagram. If they enter on more platforms, they want to make more money. They want to have more visibility, more bookings, more money. And I think, platforms are an enabler. We democratize, I think you used that word as well, we democratize access to information. So everywhere in the world can access certain information. Imagine, back to the example of your restaurant, maybe only locals knew it, but it's an hidden gem. If I'm going to Bangkok, I don't want to eat, and with all due respect, in McDonald's. I want to eat in a local place. And TripAdvisor helps me, and other platforms, of course, helps me find those hidden gems, this information that allow me as a traveler to have the best local experience possible. And I think it's also important to cover another aspect. Some platforms like TripAdvisor are completely free for businesses, which means that if you are a small, around the corner restaurant, you can compete. If you do a great job in cooking your food, in welcoming guests, in being, very local, if you do a great job at that, people will reward you. It means that they can compete with big restaurants that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on platforms, on advertising to be more visible, et cetera, et cetera. They might lose competition with those small guys. We help a lot of 1, 2, 3 people, I don't know, city center walking tours. No one would have heard of them without platforms like us. So it's not just about giving all this information to travelers, but it's also about supporting those micro enterprises, SMEs, to be visible, to make more money, which in the end of the day means supporting a family, sending a kid to school, which is extremely important, I think.
Great. So I think we're all agreed here that digital platforms are robust and support, and there may be some other opinions out there that may be contrary to that. So let's accept that we could disagree with some folks in the audience on this. But then let's look forward then. Let's look forward. What's the healthiest relationship? What would that look like between digital platforms and destinations into the future? What are the things that destinations should be doing now to prepare for this future? Because all of you alluded in some way to technology and process and the evolution of all of these platforms. Florian.
Yes, I can go on this one. Well, it's hard to see the future nowadays with the speed of AI disruption. But in my view, the destinations are still operating very much towards marketing, where maybe what is needed is more the infrastructure, right? So make your destination machine readable is super important. Make sure that your content is up to date. Make sure that you have your events calendar up to date on your platform. I think your website, your DMO website, I mean, we know that they are not the one gathering the most searches, right? especially when we look at platforms like Booking or TripAdvisors, but they are going to become super important because the AI assistants are going to pull out information from it. This is your authority platform to share any kind of information that you're able to share. So in my view, in a perfect world, it's why not building like a destination layer API, you know, where a destination is connected to all these digital platforms at once, and they don't have to send a media kit, they don't have to send a brand guideline when they need to launch a campaign.
Okay, great. So there's some technology-related
Exactly.
suggestions you made. Okay, other opinions on that?
No, I want to hear what Booking wants to say first about healthy relationships.
Okay.
My answer to that, asking what is a healthy relationship assumes that it's not healthy for some reason. And I would argue that that is, it depends on the destination. You know, we have experiences across the world where I think it's a very healthy relationship in some places and probably could be improvable in others. Like for example, I think in Japan, we have an association that sits in constant dialogue with the Japanese Tourism Administration. And we talk about every single thing, everything from promotion. During COVID, it was talking about protecting visitors, but also tourism operators. We talk about technology solutions for short-term rentals. We talk about incoming regulation. It's an all-weather dialogue, right? But this is something that the Japanese government deliberately put into place to have this dialogue with the largest platforms in the world. And Singapore has something similar, and there's a couple of other destinations that do this. Not every destination does this, right? And we always say at Booking.com, we want to have dialogue. We want to share what we see are the biggest trends and the latest insights. But not every destination wants to listen or wants to have that dialogue, which is completely fine. But I personally believe that the destinations who actually build and nurture this kind of channel of dialogue is very healthy because there's a healthy exchange. We also understand, for example, in Japan, we also understand the Japanese perspective on how they see tourism, both in terms of growth, but also in terms of anxieties, that they see too much in certain places, and they convey this to us. And I think without this dialogue, what happens is that a lot of destinations have knee-jerk reactions when it goes badly. And it comes as a surprise to all of us in the private sector as operators. And that is not healthy, right? Because we then have to react quickly, and it ruins the visitor experience. Because if we have to cut bookings, if we have to, you know, suddenly change the way, you know, customers interact with us because of a knee-jerk reaction, it's not good. So I think a healthy relationship starts with dialogue, starts with consistent, regular dialogue, and it's an exchange from both sides. I think ASEAN has this called the ASEAN Tourism Working Group under the ASEAN Secretariat. So different modalities exist, and I think that's definitely the foundation.
Great. Dialogue. Excellent. Thank you, Yang. And Sunny.
Yes, so I agree. Healthy relationships require healthy communication. However, there's so many global players in this room, but I have to say a healthy relationship for a DMO would maybe not to be too overly monogamous with one or two players out there in the market.
Polygamy. Okay.
Yes, work across the board, right? Have the one or two global players so you have that like broad reach, but go after regional players with regional expertise. Having a destination API is great because that will help surface events and things that are happening in that destination. But also let us talk directly to Ticketmaster and to the shows and the attractions, right? Like, for example, even in Korea, if there's a big band that's playing outside of Seoul and a Korean traveler couldn't get tickets, maybe we'll fly to Hong Kong or Tokyo, right, to attend a Korean boy band concert because it's easier and it's more accessible for us. So work with regional players that have expertise. And I have to say, I think I'm the only one that didn't do a plug for my company name. So partners like Tight Square. And let us help you. So open communication, yes. Maybe not so much overly dependent monogamous relationship.
Okay, great. Open relationships. Thank you, Sunny. Others, Fabrizio or?
I think it's very difficult to follow what you guys just said because everything makes total sense, and I agree with the idea of having a healthy relationship with DMOs. This is what we do as well. I think One different angle might be also tied to the skill gap, because the politicians in me started with, we need to support young generations, but it's true that innovation always arrives first, and then everyone needs to catch up. And a healthy relationship is also understanding, from a DMO perspective, what are my limits, what are my skill gaps, what is my objective especially, and then communicate this transparently to the platforms and say, how can you help me get there? How can you help me fill this gap between the skills that I have in-house today and the ones that I don't have? And I think it's a both-way communication. The first thing that they tell you when you start managing people is, when you make the annual review, people should not be surprised about what you tell them. They should know every single week in, out. And this is the type of relationship that we have with destinations, with businesses in general on TripAdvisor. I'm sure you guys do the same. Sharing insights, support, let them know what is missing, and trying to get as many information as possible in order to be able to support with their goals.
Great. Okay, so we have relationships that are open, that are direct and honest.
And polygamous.
Yes. Okay. And Florian, did you want to add anything to this?
Well, I was talking about the infrastructure, right?
Okay.
About the destination API, so developing the technology would be a key to stay visible on all of our digital platforms.
Great. Okay, so I am cognizant of time. We just heard the notification there. I would like to open it to the audience to see if there are any questions that anybody might have for our esteemed panelists. Yes, Justin over there. Please. I think a mic is coming to you, or actually you're relatively loud, so feel free to.
Hi. Oh, that's loud, sorry.
I told you you're loud.
Yeah. Hi, it's Justin from HBX, and I think that's a very interesting topic about digital tourism, data, platform, destination resilience. So between all four of you, and including ourselves, like we are in the digital space, right? And I do have a very interesting question, in the sense that we all collectively control a significant share of how travel, hotel are being discovered, priced, and booked globally. That's just to say it that way. But as a destination suffer crisis like recent times, natural disaster, political instability, pandemic, whatsoever, the technology, the algorithms deprioritize the conversion as it drops, because obviously attention is given away, right? So my question is, how do platforms have a responsibility to the destinations beyond the commercial part of things and logic? I think the DMOs would be very, very keen to know about this. And then, has anyone ever actively kept a struggling destination alive just because of it? Might be affecting the costs and stuff on their own matrix, and what can be done, I think.
Fantastic question. Thank you, Justin. So who's the brave one to answer that? Fabrizio.
I can start. I'm sure you guys can fill in. I think it goes back to the idea of having a relationship with the destination. We're not just taking the money from a destination. So when it depends on what happens, but I think someone said earlier, don't put all of your eggs in the same basket, no? And that's about right, actually. And what we do, it depends. When there's a natural disaster, what we do at TripAdvisor, if we work with the destination, and of course we take their money to advertise the destination, we stop taking that money. The destination is not visible anymore, because we would create more issues than solve problems. So we stop taking the money, because you need to spend that money to support your communities, to rebuild, et cetera, et cetera. When the destination is ready to reopen, we would then re-partner with them and help them diversify and make sure that they can access different type of travelers.
Okay, great. So you're adaptable. The platform is adaptable in these. Okay, excellent. Sunny, I see you would like to.
Yeah, no, I think when there is a destination in crisis and there are Korean outbound travelers who are maybe stuck there or haven't managed to travel there, companies like Tide Square will help you take care of our travelers, right? So that at the end of the day, they don't have a bad experience. We'll bring them home, we'll make sure that they're safe, and then we'll give them the opportunity to go again, maybe at a later point. Travel is such a long game, right? We're going to live to like 100, 150. They might not have gone to Dubai in May because of, air traffic and other reasons, but we'll make sure that they go there again. So I think that's what we do. We help our travelers and Korean travelers.
Okay, like a semi-duty of care of sorts. Okay, great. Thank you, Sunny. Florian.
Very short for me. I am conscious of the time. What we do on our side is that we give our destination access to the data, kind of like as a consultancy role, to advise them on what to do, how to react, which market to switch maybe if you are running a campaign. And we're always very open to deliver free campaigns, because what is good for the destination at the end is good for us.
Great. Okay, so using data to assist and support. Okay, Yang.
Just talk about two things, right? During a crisis, COVID, I'll give you an example. Japan launched a massive domestic travel campaign, gave every single Japanese a travel credit for every single booking, worked with all of us OTAs. We had to actually manually apply every single travel credit to every single booking, and we facilitated more than, I think, during this 1 year period, almost 4 million bookings for domestic Japanese travel to support local tourism in Japan when borders were fully closed. And it kept an innumerable number of accommodations and tourism operators alive. And it had to be all manual, right? Because we don't have an existing system that applies this kind of discount. And the money came from the government. So there was this invoicing system. It was a huge undertaking. But yeah, the answer is we absolutely support destinations during moments of crisis. And COVID could not have been a larger crisis that we all dealt with in the tourism sector, right? Probably the largest crisis we all faced. A second program that we did is sustainability. So before this program was stopped, and largely due to the EU, we had almost 1 million properties that had certifications on our platform. We work with, where's Randy here? We work with GSTC to develop the sustainable badge. For various different reasons, we had to pull the badge. But now the program is focused on third-party EU-approved certifications and how do we incentivize accommodations to get certified. And the whole reason behind this is how do we have and steer travelers to book more sustainable accommodation, right? How do we achieve net zero? We started it out, we had some hiccups, took a step back, and now we're going in a different direction to take more steps forward. So if you talk about, having a duty of care and caring for destinations, at Booking.com, we understand if there's no destination, there is no business, right? There is no bookings. So safeguarding the destination is just doing good business.
Okay, great to hear that you all support destinations through good and bad times, as Justin asked. Jonathan, can I ask one last question with one answer from each person? One word, how about that? One word answer here. One thing that tourism leaders should be preparing for now that they might be underestimating about what's going to happen in the future? Can be about anything. One word.
The issue is that...
That's not one word. Okay.
No, but you said underestimate, because otherwise someone would have said AI literacy.
Okay, so AI is what
no one is underestimating it.
No.
I think maybe crisis preparedness.
Okay, crisis preparedness with a hyphen. So one word, crisis preparedness. Thank you, Fabrizio. Sunny.
Regional partnerships?
Regional partnerships, hyphenated also. Regional partnerships. Yes, Florian.
I would say tech infrastructure.
Tech infrastructure. Everybody's got 2 words. Thank you, Florian. And finally, Yang. Let's see if we can keep them to one word.
Dialogue.
Dialogue. Excellent. All right, if you could join me in thanking the panelists, these excellent panelists. And back to you, Jonathan.
Thank you so much.